First of all, I would like to thanks to the grace of heaven, the virtue of our holy teachers, and the mercy of 老前人 and 前人, and Tao transmitting masters, and all of you to give me this opportunity to share the Great Learning 7 with you. This is the structure of the Great Learning. We completed Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 last time. Chapter 3 discusses the last guiding principle, attain supreme good. Chapter 4 explains the root and its branches. Chapters 5 to 10 explore the 8 steps of learning in detail, starting from 格物 and 致知. We will begin with Chapter 5 today, but before moving on to Chapter 5, I would like to briefly review Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Here is the 3 guiding principles. The way of great learning lies in manifesting innate virtue, renewing people, and attaining supreme good. These 3 guidelines aim to guide people to reach the final goal, attain supreme good. Now let me quickly review Chapter 3. The first part says that can a man be inferior to a bird? It begins by describing the capital city, and its surrounding land stretching 1,000 miles are the place where people aspire to live. Why? Because it offers safety jobs and opportunity. Here in the Great Learning, it says that people flock to the capital or big cities as they seek the best place to live. This still holds true today. Next, it says, the chattering yellow birds know to perch in the quiet corners of the wooded hills. This text uses a metaphor. Even little birds know to perch in quiet and safe corners of the hills. In the end, Confucius remarked, even a little bird knows where to rest. Should a person be inferior to a bird, not knowing where they ought to dwell? If birds know where to dwell, shouldn't people also know where to go? From Confucius' point of view, as a human, we should clearly know our true goal, supreme good, otherwise our efforts might be wasted. His remark emphasizes the importance of knowing one's true goal. Just as birds don't wander aimlessly, people must recognize their ultimate goal, supreme good, 至善, and strive toward it. Without this clarity, efforts may be scattered and ineffective. Confucius's viewpoint reminds us that wisdom lies not just in action, but in directing our lives toward what truly matters. Moreover, this place is not just physical, it represents our moral destination, the supreme good. Therefore, knowing our true goal is essential. Only by aligning ourselves with it can we live meaningfully, both as individuals and as a society. The second part of the Chapter 3 talks about the virtue of King Wen of Zhou. The Book of O says, how profound was the virtue of King Wen! He constantly manifested his bright virtues and reverently abided in the supreme good. King Wen is described as someone who not only attained the supreme good, but remained rooted in it. Confucius praised him as the ideal sage king. Then, the following passage illustrates how King Wen abided by each of his roles, or faithfully fulfilled the different roles throughout his life. As a ruler, he abided in benevolence, as a minister in reverence, as a son in filial piety, as a father in loving kindness, and in dealing with the people in trustworthiness. These 5 roles represent the core relationships in society, and King Wen of Zhou embodied the proper virtue in each of them. His benevolence as a ruler ensured a just and compassionate government. His reverence as a minister showed loyalty and humility in serving King Zhou of Shang, Shangzhou Wang. His filial piety as a son upheld the moral foundation of family. King Wen is well known as a filial son. His love as a father guided the next generation with care and wisdom. His two sons, King Wu, Zhou Wang, and the Duke of Zhou, Zhou Gong, inherited his moral character and carried out his grand vision. His trustworthiness in dealing with the people earned their support and loyalty. By fulfilling the moral expectations of each role, King Wen set a powerful example of how personal virtue leads to harmony in the family, the state, and the world. The third part introduces how elegant and refined gentleman studies and cultivates himself. It talks about Duke Wu of Wei. He is a great example of a true gentleman. The fourth line says that he studies deeply, thinks carefully, and continues reading and reflecting until his learning becomes refined. His cultivation is like carving and polishing jade, making it shine more and more. In the same way, his virtue grows brighter and more brilliant over time. He is careful, focused, and always respectful in his learning. After years of study and self-cultivation, he becomes solemn, dignified, and full of presence. Such a gentleman will never be forgotten by the people. In the end, it says people will never forget him. Why? Because his virtue is profound. He reached the highest level of moral excellence. This kind of goodness stays in people's hearts. If a ruler achieves this level of virtue, the people will remember him forever. This is the Confucian ideal: keep learning, keep improving, and become someone others admire and remember. The last part of the chapter 3 serves as a summary of the whole chapter. Now it mentions the ancient kings, King Wen and King Wu. These two rulers are remembered even today. Why? If a ruler honors the virtuous and cherishes his kin, enabling the people to flourish in joy and prosperity, then even long after his passing, he will not be forgotten. King Wen and King Wu are among the best examples of this ideal. Here is chapter 4. Chapter 4 of the Great Learning talks about the root and its branches. First, I'll quickly review the idea of the root and its branches. This concept highlights order and priority. Everything has its root and its branches. In the original Chinese text, the terms are ben and mo. The first character, ben, carries meanings such as root, origin, source, basis, or foundation. It represents the starting point or the core from which all things grow. That is why we translate it here as root. The second character, mo, refers to the end, the final part, or even something insignificant. It represents the outward developments or extensions of the root and is translated here as branches. The root represents the foundation, the source from which everything begins and develops. The branches, on the other hand, refer to the less essential or secondary aspects. They are the outgrowths and extensions of the root. While the branches may still be important, they are not as crucial as the root. In some cases, the branches may even represent trivial or optional things. In conclusion, understanding the concept of root and branches helps us prioritize and focus on what is truly important in life. The first thing Confucius says in this chapter is, in hearing legal cases, I'm just like anyone else. This means Confucius believes he can judge cases fairly, just like other good judges. He knows how to handle legal matters well and apply the law justly. But that's not what he truly cares about. What Confucius truly wants is for there to be no legal cases at all. That's the deeper message in the second sentence. It's not just about solving problems after they arise, but about preventing them before they even begin. This reveals something important about Confucian thinking. It always seeks the root cause, not just the surface. Rather than focusing on punishment, it emphasizes education and moral development. It's about building a society where people naturally choose to do what is right, rather than correcting or punishing them after they've gone wrong. That's why Confucius talks about knowing the root. The root is a well-ordered society built on moral values, where law is not the first solution, but the last resort. However, if we cannot reach that ideal, if conflicts still arise, then a functioning and righteous legal system becomes necessary. Confucius is not against judges or the legal system. He simply believes there is something even better, a society where justice begins in the hearts of the people. So, the root is a society grounded in moral values. But how can that be achieved if leaders govern with virtue? And if the people are raised and guided to be honest, respectful, and responsible, then the need for court cases becomes rare. People will choose to do what is right on their own, resolve conflicts peacefully, and avoid wrongdoing in the first place. Moreover, if a ruler fully manifests their own bright virtue, the people will naturally feel a deep sense of respect and even reverence toward them. In such a society, those who lack solid reasoning or moral standing will not dare to speak recklessly or stir up trouble. This is the society described in the third and fourth lines of the chapter, the one ruled under an ideal person. It is a place where moral influence replaces legal enforcement, where people are guided more by virtue than by fear of punishment. Now we move to chapter 5. It talks about the first 2 steps of the 8 steps of learning. This is a bottom-up view of the 8 steps of learning, and it clearly shows that the foundation are 格物 and 致知. 格物 means investigating things or eradicating desires, while 致知 means extending knowledge or awakening conscience. Again, this is the structure of the great learning. Chapters 5 to 10 explore the 8 steps of learning in detail, and we start from chapter 5 now. The chapter 5 of the great learnings talks about investigating things, extending knowledge, which are the first 2, 格物, 致知. In the 8 steps of the learning, here is the text. This is called knowing the root. This is what it means to extend knowledge to the extreme. Obviously, these 2 sentences do not convey any meaningful message related to the title of this chapter. It is clear that the original text, meant to explain the chapter, has unfortunately been lost over time, due to the missing content. Later, Confucian scholars sought to recover and interpret the meaning of this important teaching. Zhu Xi wrote a commentary on this chapter when he compiled the Analects, the Great Learning, the Doctrine of the Mean, and the Mencius into what became known as the 4 books. In his commentary, Zhu Xi interpreted 格物 as investigating things and 致知 as extending knowledge, linking them to the process of self-cultivation and the pursuit of moral understanding. I have raised 4 questions to the Book of the Great Learning earlier. First question, what is the true meaning of 格物 and 致知? You may notice for 格物, there are 2 interpretations in my translation. The first is investigate things, or more specifically, investigate the principles of things. The second is eradicate desires, or more precisely, eradicate selfish desires. The first interpretation comes from Zhu Xi, while the second is from Wang Yangmin. Similarly, for 致知, there are two interpretations. The first is extend knowledge, or extend knowledge to the extreme, which is Zhu Xi's view. The second is awaken conscience, which is Wang Yangming's perspective. Why are there two different interpretations from these two prominent scholars? And which one is correct, or which one is better? This is the first question. I mentioned that I'll dive into this question along with Chapter 5, and I am going to address and answer this question in the following. To answer this question, we need to understand more about Zhu Xi and Wang Yangming first, as well as the schools of thought behind them. Let's start with Zhu Xi's commentary on Chapter 5. The above text is Chapter 5 of the Great Learning, originally written by Zengzi, to explain the meaning of investigating things and extending knowledge, but it has been lost over time. I once borrowed Cheng Yi's ideas to supplement the original meaning as follows. The Great Learning was originally recorded on bamboo slips, carved and compiled by Zengzi, a devoted disciple of Confucius. It is said that Confucius himself selected and refined the core teachings, and Zengzi further developed and transmitted them, preserving the philosophy through written form. These bamboo slips were bound together with cords, the common method of documentation in ancient China. However, over the span of more than 1,000 years, many of these slips were damaged, lost, or disordered, either due to decay, breakage, or the snapping of the ropes that bound them. As a result, entire sections of the text were lost, and what remains of Chapter 5 is just a brief fragment. This loss has left a gap in the original explanation of the phrase, investigating things and extending knowledge, prompting later scholars like Zhu Xi to reconstruct its meaning through interpretation and commentary based on earlier traditions and the teachings of Cheng Yi. The extension of knowledge lies in the investigation of things. This means that to fully expand our knowledge, we should start from the phenomena of things and diligently explore their essence and principles. Every human mind possesses innate perceptive wisdom, and all things in the world follow natural laws. However, since we have not thoroughly investigated the principles of things, our knowledge remains incomplete. In Confucian philosophy, the idea that the key to extending knowledge lies in investigating things emphasizes the method of learning. According to Zhu Xi's interpretation in the Great Learning, true understanding is achieved not through passive reading or memorization, but by closely observing the world around us and exploring the deeper principles behind what we see. Each person is naturally capable of understanding, and everything in the world follows its own pattern or logic. However, if we do not carefully examine and reflect on these patterns, our knowledge remains limited. For example, a student may memorize mathematical formulas, but unless they investigate why the formulas work, their understanding is shallow. Similarly, in daily life, we might notice someone is upset, but only by observing their behavior and understanding their situation can we truly comprehend the underlying reason. This teaching encourages us to engage with the world thoughtfully and to cultivate wisdom through studying, experience, and reflection. In doing so, we not only expand our knowledge, but also deepen our insight into the natural order of life. Therefore, the Great Learning first instructs learners to investigate the things they encounter, delving deeper from known principles to attain the highest level of understanding. in this part of Zhu Xi's supplement to the Great Learning, the importance of active and ongoing inquiry is further emphasized. From the very beginning, learners are taught to engage directly with the things of the world. Everything they encounter in daily life becomes part of the learning process. This approach encourages learners to build on what they already understand and continue exploring until they reach the deepest level of knowledge. Zhu Xi's teaching reminds us that learning is not limited to books or classrooms. For example, if someone knows the basic idea of kindness, they are encouraged to observe real-life situations, how people respond to help, or how empathy affects relationships, and then explore these experiences more deeply. By doing so, they move from surface understanding to true insight. Zhu Xi's words inspire us to be lifelong learners, continuously expanding our understanding by connecting familiar knowledge with new observations. Through this method, we do not merely accumulate knowledge and information, but cultivate wisdom that guides our actions and decisions in the world. When sufficient effort has been made and the heart suddenly becomes enlightened, at that moment, everything, whether external appearances, inner essence, details, contours, or interrelations, will be fully comprehended in the mind. Only then can it be said that the principles of things have been thoroughly investigated, and only then can it be called the ultimate attainment of knowledge. When we keep putting in effort to understand something day after day, even when it feels difficult, there may come a moment when everything suddenly becomes clear. It's like a light turning on in the heart and mind. This sudden moment of clarity is not magic, it comes from deep and steady learning. At that moment, everything we observe, whether it's the surface of things or their deeper meanings, the small details or the big picture, all of it becomes fully understood. The mind becomes sharp, open, and complete. It is as if we suddenly see how everything connects and makes sense. This is what the Confucian tradition calls the investigation of things. But it is more than just collecting facts. It's about reaching the highest level of understanding, where knowledge is not just in the brain, but alive in the heart and guiding our actions naturally. So, when we study with sincerity and patience, we don't just learn, we grow. And eventually, we gain wisdom that helps us live better and bring good to the world. You must have heard these two terms, knowledge and wisdom, but you may not think about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. These two words sound similar, but are actually very different. Knowledge means having information. It is the facts, skills, and data we gain through studying or experience. For example, knowing that fire is hot or being able to list important historical events. Knowledge is what fills our books, schools, and even our mobile phones. It tells us what something is. But wisdom goes deeper. Wisdom is the ability to use knowledge in the right way. It's not just about knowing something, but about applying it with good judgment, understanding, and care. For example, a child may know fire is hot, but wisdom is what stops them from touching it out of curiosity. Or when someone is angry, wisdom helps us respond calmly rather than with more anger. Confucianism teaches us that wisdom involves understanding what is right, acting with virtue, and making decisions that help ourselves and others. In daily life, wisdom shows up when we choose patience over pride, kindness over being right, or when we step back and think before we speak. In short, knowledge is knowing the facts, wisdom is knowing what to do with them. So where do we get knowledge and wisdom? Most schools and books today give us knowledge. But to gain true wisdom, we must learn from the teachings of ancient sages, those who understood how to live with virtue and right purpose. Today, many people teach methods and shortcuts to success, but if they ignore morality, even if you gain something for a while, it will not last. We all need both, but only wisdom, grounded in ethics and truth, leads to a life that is truly good, meaningful, and lasting. Here is a short story. Give a fish and teach to fish. There is a saying, give someone a fish and you feed them for a day, teach them to fish, and you feed them for a lifetime. As a vegetarian, I change too. Give someone vegetables and you feed them for a day, teach them to farm, and you feed them for a lifetime. There was an old man fishing by the river, and a child came to see him fishing. The old man was skilled, so he caught a basket full of fish very fast. The old man saw the cute child and would like to give him the whole basket of fish. The child shook his head, and the old man asked in surprise, "Why don't you want it?" "I want the fishing rod in your hand," the child replied. "What do you want the fishing rod for?" "This basket of fish will be eaten soon. If I have a fishing rod, I can fish by myself, and I will have fish for my whole life." I think you may say, "What a smart kid!" However, if he only has a fishing rod without the skill of fishing, he still can't get any fish. A fishing rod itself is useless since the most important thing in fishing is the skills. Many people think that they already have a fishing rod of life, and they are no longer afraid of the obstacles in life. However, some may still inevitably fall on the muddy ground. Just like the child in this story, he thought that as long as there is a fishing rod, there will be endless fish. The same goes for how some staff members look at the boss and think that as long as they sit in the office, they will earn money easily. That may not be true. Simply having a fishing rod is not enough. It is skill and wisdom that matter most. I introduced the evolution of Confucianism before for helping us gain a clearer understanding of Confucianism. Its influence has deeply shaped society, politics, and culture not only in China, but across East Asia as a whole. During the spring and autumn period, both Confucianism and Taoism emerged as significant schools of thought. In Warring States period, Mencius and Xunzi further developed Confucian thought, while the 100 schools of thought flourished and contended. Moism and legalism had considerable influence on Confucianism. In Qin dynasty, legalism dominated, leading to the burning of books and the burying of scholars, which was a severe blow to Confucianism and other schools of thought from the Warring States period. In Han Dynasty, Confucianism was elevated to the status of the official ideology through the policy of revering Confucianism exclusively, and it gradually became the core content of the imperial exam system. During Wei Jin and northern and southern dynasties, Buddhism and Taoism flourished, while Confucianism declined in influence. However, its doctrines had already been deeply embedded in Chinese culture and folk traditions. I will share more about the evolution of Confucianism during the Tang Song and Ming dynasties in the following section. After Confucianism declined during the chaotic Wei Jin and northern and southern dynasties, it experienced a major revival in the middle of Tang Dynasty. Thinkers like Han Yu and Li Ou led this movement by advocating Confucian values while challenging the growing influence of Buddhism and Taoism. Their efforts laid the groundwork for the Song dynasty's more profound philosophical transformation. During the early Song period, scholars including Zhou Dunyi, the Cheng brothers, Cheng Yi, Chen Haobei and Zhang Zai enriched Confucian thought by blending it with Taoist ideas about the universe. They introduced concepts such as Li, cosmic principle, and Qi, vital energy, transforming Confucianism from mere social ethics into a fully developed philosophical system. Meanwhile, practical statesmen like Fan Zhongyan and Sima Guan demonstrated how Confucian ideas could truly implement good and effective government, emphasizing moral leadership and public service. Zhu Xi brought together and perfected the Neo-Confucianism. He handpicked the Confucian four books, the Great Learning, the Doctrine of the Mean, the Analects, and the Mencius, and wrote influential commentaries that became required reading for civil service exams. By weaving together metaphysics, ethics, and education, Zhu Xi created a unified philosophy that dominated Chinese thought for centuries. This Song-era Neo-Confucianism, known as Li Xue, or a study of principle, cemented Confucianism as the foundation of East Asian culture, shaping societies through the Ming, Qing, and even into modern times. While Zhu Xi's school of principle dominated Confucian thought, Lu Jiuyuan proposed a bold alternative. He taught that our own mind holds all moral truth, what he called the universal mind. Instead of studying external principles, Lu believed we should look inward through reflection and trust our moral instincts. His famous saying captures this: "The universe is my mind, and my mind is the universe." This became known as the School of Mind, Xinxue, though overlooked in his time. Lu's ideas later inspired Wang Yangming during the Ming Dynasty. Wang Yangming developed these concepts further, teaching that everyone is born with innate moral awareness, 良知. This innate moral awareness actually refers to our true nature, and everyone has true nature. He famously said knowledge and action must be united. 知行合一. We truly understand morality only when we put into practice, not just think about it. Through Wang Yangming's teachings, the school of mind once again returned to public attention and gained popularity, going on to influence scholars and modern thinkers across East Asia. I'd like to compare two famous scholars in Neo-Confucianism, Zhu Xi and Lu Jiuyuan. Each represent a different school of thought. Let's start with Zhu Xi, the most influential Neo-Confucian thinker. He gave special importance to four key Confucian texts: the Analects, Mencius, the Great Learning, and the Doctrine of the Mean. He compiled and reorganized them into what we now call the Four Books, which later became the foundation of the civil service exams in Imperial China. Zhu Xi belonged to the school of principle, Li Xue. He believed that everything in the universe is governed by a universal principle called Li. This, Yi, is found throughout the world and serves as the underlying principle behind all things. According to Zhu Xi, we can come to understand Li by practicing 格物, or investigation of things, a careful and rational study of the world. Through this process, individuals can gradually learn and gain more wisdom. On the other hand, Lu Jiuyuan, also known as Lu Xiangshan, developed the school of mind, Xinxue. He was a contemporary and a major rival of Zhu Xi. Lu believed that instead of looking outward to find universal principles, we should look within. In his own words, The universe is my mind, and my mind is the universe. Lu taught that every person is born with an original mind filled with moral goodness. Like benevolence and righteousness granted by heaven, this original mind is shared by all people, whether sages or ordinary person. In short, Zhu Xi focused on principle in the world, while Lu emphasized the mind within. Let's look at the origins of the two major schools in Neo-Confucianism, the school of principle and the school of mind. Their roots may actually be traced back to a single sentence from the doctrine of the mean. It says, "Therefore, a Junzi, a virtuous person, esteems his virtuous nature and follows the path of inquiry and learning." This one line gave rise to two different interpretations and two different approaches to self-cultivation. The school of principle, represented by thinkers like Zhu Xi, focused on the part that says, follows the path of inquiry and learning. They believed that by studying the world, understanding universal principles, and investigating things carefully, a person could gain wisdom and improve in self-cultivation. On the other hand, the school of mind, led by figures like Lu Jiuyuan and later Wang Yangming, emphasized esteeming one's virtuous nature. They believed that moral goodness is already present within the heart-mind. Instead of looking outward to study the world, one should look inward to awaken the original moral sense that is already there. In short, the school of principle looks outward to understand the world. The school of mind looks inward to understand the mind. Both aim for the same goal, virtue and wisdom, but take very different paths to get there. In fact, from the original text, we can see that both are essential and neither can be omitted. Let's compare the Zhu Xi's school of principle and Wang Yangming's school of mind. Since we have discussed Zhu Xi and the school of principle, let's turn our attention to Wang Yangming, the leading thinker of the school of mind during the Ming Dynasty. In the Ming Dynasty, Neo-Confucianism became the official state ideology. Most scholars followed Zhu Xi's teachings and agreed on the importance of the universal principle. However, not everyone agreed on how to understand or realize the principle. Wang Yangming initially tried to follow Zhu Xi's path by investigating the principle of bamboo, a practice known as Gewu, but found it unconvincing and ineffective. This led him to turn inward and eventually embrace Lu Jiuyuan's school of mind. Wang Yangming was a rare historical figure who excelled in both civil and military affairs. On one hand, he developed profound philosophical ideas in school of mind. On the other, he was a skilled general who successfully led troops and won in many battles. After Zhu Xi, he is widely considered the most important Neo-Confucian thinker. While Zhu Xi emphasized rational study of the external world to discover the principle, Wang Yangming believed that Li was already present within our own minds. Therefore, instead of only looking outward, we must also look inward. He taught that by calming the mind, reflecting inward, and listening to our innate moral conscience, we could distinguish right from wrong. This approach came to be known as the school of mind. Wang Yangming also emphasized the unity of knowledge and action. He argued that knowing what is right is meaningless unless we actually do it. True cultivation of the heart must come from practice. Only by uniting knowledge and action can one achieve true self-cultivation. He interpreted Gewu as eradication of selfish desires. In short, while Zhu Xi focused on external study and gradual cultivation, Wang Yangming focused on inner awakening and the cultivation of the mind. I'd like to introduce one of the most important ideas in Wang Yangming's philosophy, his famous four-sentence teaching, also known as 四句教. In just 4 lines, Wang Yangming summarized the essence of the school of mind by linking it to the first 4 steps of learning in the Great Learning, offering a concise and complete guide to self-cultivation. Let's look at the 4 sentences. First, neither good nor evil is the essence of the mind. This means that before thoughts arise, the human mind is pure and undivided. It is calm, tranquil, and free from judgment or desire. In fact, this mind is sometimes referred to as the original mind, 本心. And the essence of mind is our true nature, or the Tao within us. The essence of the mind can be linked to the 4th step of learning, rectifying mind, 正心 second. Having good and evil is the arising of thought. This sentence simply states the fact that when thoughts arise in our mind, some may be good while others may be evil. Only saints and sages are free from evil thoughts in their minds. The arising of the thought can be linked to the 3rd step of learning, making thought sincere, Cheng Yi. Third, knowing good and evil is the innate conscience. Wang Yangming called this 良知, or innate conscience. He believed that everyone is born with the ability to tell right from wrong. We don't need to learn it from the outside. It's already within us. The innate conscience can be linked to the 2nd step of learning, awakening conscience, 智智. Fourth, doing good without evil is 格物. In Zhuxi's school of principle, 格物 means investigating external things to discover truth. But Wang Yangming redefined it, 格物, is the act of eliminating selfish desires and putting moral understanding into action. Doing good without evil is the 1st step of learning, eliminating desires, 格物. In short, Wang Yangming taught that true moral understanding comes from within, and that real learning must lead to action. For him, knowledge and action are one. These 4 sentences from Wang Yangming provide an excellent explanation of the first 4 steps of learning, eradicating desires, awakening conscience, making thoughts sincere, and rectifying mind. They continue to inspire people today, reminding us that wisdom begins in the mind and is fulfilled through practice. So, the answer to this question should now be quite clear. Both are essential and correct. 格物 means investigating things and eradicating desires. 知知 means extending knowledge and awakening conscience. A famous Zen master was about to die soon, and his disciples were sitting around him, waiting for the master to tell them the secrets of life and the universe. The Zen master remained silent with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he asked his disciple, "How can we get rid of the weeds?" The disciples were dumbfounded, not expecting the Zen master to ask such a simple question. The first disciple said, "Shovel all the weeds away with a shovel." The second disciple said, "You can burn the weeds with a fire." The third disciple said, "Put lime on the grass to get rid of the weeds." The fourth disciple said, "None of their methods are good as the roots are not removed. The roots must be dig out." After the disciples replied the question, the Zen master said, "You all spoke very good. Starting from tomorrow, this grassland will be divided into several pieces, and each of you removes the weeds on the ground according to your own methods. We will get together here again, this time next year." The disciples came to this grassland this time next year very early. They tried all kinds of methods to eradicate the weeds, but none of them worked. They had already given up this task. Now they just wanted to see what methods the Zen master used. The master's original overgrown land was gone, replaced by golden crops. The disciples suddenly realized that only planting crops in weeds is the best way to eradicate the weeds. They sat down on the fields. The crops were ripe, but the master had already passed away. This was the master's last lesson for them, and all students shed tears of gratitude. The only way to get rid of weeds in the wilderness is to plant crops. The only way to keep your soul rich is to cultivate your own virtues. When the heart is filled with positive energy and the wisdom to bring happiness and relieve the suffering of all living beings, ignorance, darkness, and troubles will be effortlessly and naturally eliminated. 大学浅言新注, or New Commentary on the Great Learning in Plain Words, is a unique Taoist reinterpretation of the Great Learning. It was composed in 1947 through the traditional Taoist channeling or spirit writing method at Qianyuan Tang in Xi'an and is attributed to Lü Dongbing, a legendary Taoist immortal. The work is often paired with its companion text on the doctrine of the mean, reflecting an integrated approach to Confucian ethical thought and Taoist spiritual cultivation. This commentary is notable for its attempt to restore and explain the lost teachings on 格物 and 致知, which were believed to have disappeared during the Qing dynasty's suppression of classical texts. Lü Dongbing's interpretation blends Confucian moral principles with Taoist inner cultivation, guiding readers to harmonize heart, body, and mind as part of an integrated path to wisdom. By reinterpreting the text through a spiritual viewpoint, Lü Dongbing offers a way for modern readers to understand Confucian teachings as tools for personal transformation and universal salvation, not just social order. Lü Dongbing, also known as Patriarch Lü, Lü Zu, or Pure Young Perfect Being, 纯阳真人, is one of the most renowned person in Taoism and Chinese folk religion, thought to have lived during the 8th-9th century. He is celebrated as a poet, sword master, and alchemical expert. He later became a key patriarch of Quan Zhen Dao. Widely venerated as one of the 8 immortals, Patriarch Lü symbolizes transcendence, wisdom, and benevolent guidance. His teachings emphasize cultivating virtue, clarity of mind, and alignment with the cosmic order. In 大学浅言新注, Patriarch Lü warns that the decline of moral values leads to societal unrest and spiritual confusion. He calls for a return to sincerity, righteousness, and harmony with the heavenly principle Tianli. Written in plain language, the work serves as both a spiritual manual and a moral compass, aiming to help people navigate modern moral crises through timeless wisdom. To restore one's true nature, one must first eliminate selfish desires. This means that when greed and desire arise in the heart, one's nature deviates from the right path. When anger and hatred arise, one's nature becomes obstructed. When obsession and extravagance arise, one's nature grows restless. And when attachment and delusion arise, one's nature is led astray and altered. In this paragraph, Patriarch Lü points out if we want to return to our true nature, we must begin by eliminating selfish desires. Why? Because when greed and desire arise, our heart is no longer centered. Our nature starts to drift from the right path. When anger and hatred take hold, our inner clarity is blocked. Our nature becomes stuck and stagnant. when obsession and extravagance dominate. We lose balance, our nature becomes restless and unsettled. And when we cling to attachment and delusion, we stray even further. Our nature becomes distorted and no longer our own. Our true nature is pure, but selfish desires obscure it, just like clouds blocking the sun. To restore this true nature, we must first clear away these emotional and mental obstacles. It's like cleaning a mirror. Only when the dust is wiped away can it reflect clearly. By recognizing and addressing 4 key challenges, greed, anger, obsession, and attachment, we can return to purity and tranquility. Therefore, to remove the impurities of the heart, one must eliminate greed and desire to correct a deviated nature. Calm anger and hatred to unblock an obstructed nature. Eradicate obsession and extravagance to stabilize a restless nature. And sever attachment and delusions to steady a wavering nature. Let's think about this. If we want to return to our true nature, we must first remove what clouds it. The impurities of the heart are not permanent stains. They are dust that we can wipe away. So how do we do that? First, we must eliminate greed and desire, as they distort our nature and lead us astray. Second, we need to calm anger and hatred, as these emotions block our inner clarity and peace. Third, we must eradicate obsession and extravagance, as they keep the mind restless and unsettled. Finally, we need to sever attachment and delusions, as these cause us to waver and lose our inner direction. By removing these impurities, we're not just fixing the surface. We're restoring the heart to its original clarity, unclouded, grounded, and ready to act with wisdom. It is like cleaning a mirror. Only when the dust is wiped away can it reflect clearly. When we remove these impurities, our true nature, which is pure, tranquil, and radiant, shines through. When greed and desire arise in the heart, one's nature deviates from the right path. One must eliminate greed and desire to correct a deviated nature. When anger and hatred arise, one's nature becomes obstructed. One must calm anger and hatred to unblock an obstructed nature. When obsession and extravagance arise, one's nature grows restless. One must eradicate obsession and extravagance to stabilize a restless nature. When attachment and delusion arise, one's nature is led astray and altered. One must sever attachment and delusions to steady a wavering nature. To restore one's true nature, one must first eliminate selfish desires or remove the impurities of the heart, 心物. The impurities of the heart contains 4 things: greed, anger, obsession, and attachment, 贪嗔痴爱. There is a similar things in Buddhism. 3 poisons in Buddhism, greed, hatred, and delusion, 贪嗔痴, are the 3 root causes of all suffering. They keep us stuck in cycles of frustration and unhappiness, and in the endless cycle of rebirth. Greed is the craving for pleasure, possessions, or power, leading to attachment and dissatisfaction. Hatred manifests as anger, aversion, or hostility, creating conflict and inner unrest. Delusion is ignorance of the true nature of reality, clouding judgment, and sustaining false views. These 3 poisons distort our thinking, fuel harmful actions, and keep us suffering. But Buddhism teaches that we can free ourselves from them. Greed fades when we practice generosity and contentment. Hatred dissolves when we cultivate patience and compassion. Delusion clears when we develop wisdom and see reality clearly. In addition, Buddhist practice seeks to overcome them through precepts, meditation, and wisdom 戒定慧. Specifically, precepts counters greed, meditation calms hatred, and wisdom dispels delusion. By transforming greed into generosity, hatred into compassion, and delusion into wisdom, one purifies the mind and moves toward nirvana and lasting peace. Thus, 君子, a virtuous person, remains vigilant before impure thoughts arise and suppresses evil thoughts the moment they emerge. Impurities of the heart obscure one's true nature, while improper actions corrupt the heart. Removing these impurities restore one to their original nature, while eliminating improper actions awakens the mind's innate purity. The true nature, the heart, and the body are inseparable, just like the roots, trunk, and branches of a plant. Let's reflect on how a virtuous person, 君子, guards their inner minds. First, 君子 is cautious, even before impure thoughts fully arise. They don't wait for bad intentions to grow. As soon as a selfish or harmful thought begins to form, they stop it immediately. Remain vigilant before the impure thoughts arise. Why is this so important? Because impure thoughts cloud our true nature. And when our actions go astray, they further pollute our heart. Bad thoughts hide the light within. Bad behavior leaves lasting stains. That's why Patriarch Lu say, removing these impurities restore one to their original nature. Eliminating improper actions awakens the mind's innate purity. Finally, we must remember, the true nature, the heart, and the body are inseparable. They move together as one, just like the roots, trunk, and branches of a living tree. When one part suffers, the whole tree is affected. When the roots are pure and healthy, the entire being flourishes. To become truly wise and compassionate, we must tend to our inner thoughts, our actions, and then restore our true nature together and continuously. The true nature and heart reside within. Internal awakening is called self-enlightenment. External actions that manifest this enlightenment to guide others are called enlightening others. Therefore, sage within, king without. The cultivation of inner sainthood and its external benevolent manifestation are both indispensable. Our true nature and our heart reside within us. When we awaken to this inner truth, it is called self-enlightenment. It's the process of discovering clarity, compassion, and wisdom inside ourselves. But this inner awakening must not stay hidden. When we manifest it through our actions, we begin to enlighten others. This is how our inner virtue becomes a source of guidance for those around us. Therefore, both are essential, sage within. Refining our inner self and restore our true nature, and king without, it manifests that refinement through our behavior and leadership. These two, inner cultivation and outer action, must go hand in hand. One without the other is incomplete. If impurities of the heart are allowed to grow and spread, they will inevitably obscure one's true nature. This is why saints remain vigilant before impure thoughts arise. By maintaining vigilance before such thoughts emerge, the impurities of the heart will never take root. When the heart is free from impurities, one's true nature will naturally manifest, restoring one to their original state. If impurities in the heart, such as selfish thoughts or harmful emotions, are left unchecked, they will grow and gradually obscure our true nature, just like weeds overtaking a clear garden. This is why saints, those who have already perfected their character, are vigilant even before impure thoughts arise. They guard their minds carefully, not only when temptations appear, but even in moments of silence and stillness. Even before any negative thought arises, saints hold fast to caution. Because of this unwavering vigilance, such thoughts never get the chance to take root. When the heart remains undisturbed by impurity, the true nature shines continuously, bright and pure, like the morning sun. And in this clarity, one returns to the original state, a state of harmony, purity, and tranquility. So, let us learn from the saints. By watching over the mind in quiet moments, we protect our nature from being clouded and allow our inner light to shine forth once again. When improper actions become apparent, the heart has already been corrupted. Thus, sages begin eliminating their improper actions, recognizing that they failed to remain vigilant before impure thoughts arose. If one cannot be vigilant before impure thoughts arise, greed, anger, obsession, and attachment will gradually intensify and manifest in words and actions. This is what is meant by improper actions becoming apparent. When improper actions become visible, whether through harmful words or bad behavior, it's a sign that the heart has already been polluted. The damage is not just external, it reflects an internal failure to guard the mind. Sages, unlike saints, are not yet perfect, but compared to ordinary people, they possess something crucial, a moral self-awakening. They recognize their faults and actively work to correct them. Why do sages work hard to remove their improper behavior? Because they realize that the problem started earlier, when they fail to be cautious with subtle, impure thoughts before they grew. If we don't catch those early negative thoughts like greed, anger, obsession, and unhealthy attachments, they will grow stronger and eventually leak out through our speech and actions. This visible misbehavior is what's called improper actions becoming apparent. When the problem first starts, it is relatively easy to solve. Once the problem becomes serious, it takes a lot of effort to solve it. The sage teaches us a valuable lesson. We must start from the root, by cultivating vigilance in the quiet moments of the mind. Only then can we prevent inner impurity from becoming outward misconduct. I will end my speech here. For any mistakes I made, I apologize to God and Buddhas, and your suggestions are welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.